11:18 is the time. You may have noticed over the course of the last few weeks, over the last few days, that there have been protests taking place outside fuel depots, blocking some of the oil tankers from leaving those, and also various football matches as well. People have tied themselves via cable ties to goalposts and things. It's all part of action from a group called Just Stop Oil, and I'm pleased that one of their spokespeople is in the studio with me live, Nathan McGovern. Thank you very much for coming in. Tell us what action you've taken thus far. I think you've blocked around 7, on Friday you blocked about 7 depots. Why?
So the Just Stop Oil Coalition is just ordinary people all across the country from all walks of life who realise this is an industry that cannot carry on. It is an industry that's actively murdering people all across the planet. And the science is clear. We have to stop all new fossil fuel projects now if we're serious about the climate crisis, if we're serious about our futures, me as a young person, if people who are parents and grandparents are serious about the futures of their children and grandchildren. When
you say they're actively murdering people, can you give us an example?
All right, so recently, I'm sure you'll have heard, there was an oil spill off the South American coast in Ecuador. Mm-hmm. That oil has seeped into the rivers, seeped into fishing communities. They can no longer make a living. They can't grow food now. They're being murdered by that industry.
That's murder, is it?
Absolutely. By continuing,
how is that murder, though?
By continuing to carry out projects fossil fuel projects.
Of course, there are things that go wrong. There are things that have gone horrendously wrong.
The entire industry is wrong.
Huge.
We can't mention safety. We can't mention security when we talk about any of the fossil fuel industry.
I'm just interested in the language around some of this that might actually be off-putting to people whom you want to join your aims when you talk about the oil industry actively murdering people.
Absolutely. The entire industry is destroying the planet. I mean, right next to me, I have a copy of the IPCC report, the most recent one. Have you read the last paragraph, at least?
The last paragraph?
The last paragraph.
No, I've read the foreword of it.
The foreword of it. All right, I'll read the last paragraph to you right now. The cumulative scientific evidence is unequivocal. Climate change is a threat to human well-being and planetary health. Mm-hmm. Any further delay in concerted anticipatory global action on adaptation and mitigation will miss a brief and rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all. That climate change, that global warming, is directly fueled by the fossil fuel industry.
No doubt.
Another example, the International Energy Agency told us last year, if we are serious, if we are sincere about tackling the climate crisis, securing a future, there are no new fossil fuels. This is in 2021. In 2022, the British government still plans to plough ahead with 40 of those projects. So 40 of those projects that are causing this murder, are causing drought, are causing famine all the way across the planet.
Do you accept that once we reach 2050, if we've been able to transition to net zero by 2050, that oil and gas are still going to have to play a part, a small part, a much smaller part than currently, but they will have to play a part?
Absolutely not. I mean, you mentioned 2050, you mentioned net zero. That only gives us a 50-50 chance of the mitigation we need. I mean, I know you're a father. Would you put your child into a car with a madman with a 50-50 chance, a flip of a coin, that they will crash the car and kill your child? Would you put them in that car?
That is
the scenario we are in right now.
I just don't think these comparisons are particularly helpful.
No, they absolutely are.
So what projects do you want to see got rid of?
All new fossil fuel projects in the UK. We have, according to the OGA, 5 to 8 years of supplies left. That is ample time to fully transition away, a just transition for everyone involved, away from those destructive industries and towards industries that do give us energy.
So the specific projects, because I think there was an oil field at Cambo that actually did get scotched. What are the things that are happening that you want to see stopped?
So we have Abigail. We have calls for a return to fracking. We have calls to open a new
the moratorium still exists on fracking, doesn't it?
I'm sure you're aware there are a lot of people pushing for that to be
There are, but the government doesn't seem to be moving to frack. They're keeping the moratorium in place.
We have 40 new fossil fuel projects lined up by this government. I mean, that's public knowledge. Any newspaper can tell you that. And I mean, going back to what I've just told you about the International Energy Agency, they told us last year we have no new fossil fuel projects if we're serious. We have to make the transition, and we have the technology to do it.
But I think that actually most people understand that we are going to have to do this, that we are going to move away quite quickly and deliberately away from oil and gas. The problem is that you're never going to be able to get rid of it completely very, very quickly. What
In
then
times
would
of
you,
emergency,
what
we
then
can
would
make
you
changes
expect?
very quickly.
What then would you expect
Look at
people to do?
coronavirus.
Hang on a sec, let me ask
Look
the
at the
question.
amount of changes we made quickly. We have
me
to
ask the
make
question.
changes very, very fast.
What would
we
you
have a
like
closing
people
window
to
of
do?
opportunity. That is directly from the IPCC report. We do not have the time to sit here and talk about it and prevaricate. Change
would you
has to
like
happen now.
People, okay, so what would you like people to change in their lives, how they go about their lives in order to try and meet this aim?
Well, first of all, I'd say, well, look at the ordinary people around you that are part of the Just Stop Oil Coalition. Look at them. Look at who they're fighting for. You're probably fighting for the exact same thing, the future of your children, the hope that your children might have children. Every day, you have an opportunity to learn about the Just Stop Oil campaign, and I urge everyone to do that.
And by not taking part in this campaign, your literature describes people as being, quotes, complicit in the greatest ever genocide.
Our government is complicit.
Oh, well,
in the greatest ever
you're now
genocide.
talking about
Our government
my listeners. You're
are
now
not
talking about
representing
me. You're now talking about
people they're meant to
families
represent.
and children. You're talking about millions of people who haven't got on board with either your aims or your actions, who are now apparently complicit in the greatest ever genocide. Do you think that's fair?
Tom, do you care about telling the truth?
Well, yes, obviously it's a hypothetical
Why are you not telling
question.
those millions of people what they need to know?
What do you mean?
Why are you not telling those millions of people?
Why didn't you answer my
about the
question
horror
before you start
that is
asking
awaiting
your
them?
own? Do
I
you
quite
think it's
frankly
fair?
think it's a disgrace.
Do you think it's fair
A
to say that people
platform
who
that
don't
you
join
have
your
the
join your
ability you
organisation are
have
complicit
to
in the
tell
greatest ever
people
genocide?
about the
You've
climate
just
crisis,
read the
about
final
the situation
paragraph
we're
of
in,
the report,
and you
I'm
are
happy to
happy
take that.
to watch them sit in misinformation. You are happy.
What's the
to watch
misinformation that's been
them
given
die.
out that you've given out this
You
morning?
have a massive platform. You have a massive platform, right?
Oh, here we go.
You have a massive platform, a microphone that you can use to tell people about the situation we're in, and you are not using it, right?
So for those of
You
you
are
listening,
not using it.
For those of
That
you
is why
listening on the
someone
radio,
like me, an ordinary person who is
Yeah.
fighting for their future, is having to take the microphone in a situation like this and having to tell your viewers the situation we are in, because people like you do not.
So for those
people
people
like
who-
you
you've
are
got
giving
no
as
idea.
much
You've got
as a death
absolutely
sentence
no
to
idea.
your viewers as our government is,
got-
as the fossil
brilliant.
fuel companies are.
So, and that goes for all those people. By the way, for those of you listening, wondering what the banging on the microphone was, Mr. McGovern has apparently, I think is it glue? You seem to have glued yourself
Absolutely.
to the microphone, so that's fantastic.
If you're not going to use the microphone for the people of this country, the people all around the world, to let them know what's happening to their lives right now,
You've been invited on
someone
this
else
program.
will.
You've been invited on this program to tell us about what the aims of your organisation are. You've come on to talk to us about the aims of your organisation. You've gone through some of them. I've asked you questions about some of the language you're using, and you seem to think that the best way of persuading people to join you in this cause is to tell people that they're either complicit in the greatest ever genocide or superglue yourself to a microphone.
People need to be aware of the situation we're in.
You've been given the opportunity to. You've been given the opportunity
You have
to
had the
make
opportunity
yourself
for
aware.
years and years. You had the opportunity
with
when you were
respect,
head of
Mr.
broadcast at Downing Street.
Yes,
you
and
had
and
the
that,
chance
by the way,
to tell the people of this country.
By the way, that is the government that put 2050 into law as a target to
this
gain to net
2050
zero.
that we know only gives us a 50-50 chance. A 50-50 chance. I've already asked you, would you put your child
just don't
into
think
a
it's
car with a 50-50 chance it's going to crash and they will die?
Obviously not, but it's
There
not
we
the
are.
same. Because
so
you're-
why would you send
because you're-
the rest of the British people to the same fate?
Because you
That
are
is what you are
describing the
doing.
car as a thing that isn't going to change. The car is changing all the time. The government is, and there are absolutely legitimate arguments about whether it's quickly enough. They are trying to move away from oil and gas. We've just been talking this morning about the solar panels and the heat pumps and the onshore and offshore wind that's needed. The idea that you're going to be able to persuade people, ordinary people like yourself, to join an organisation like this in the manner in which you're doing is not going to work. You are not going to get ordinary people to come and join you.
The ordinary people that you're lying to. The ordinary people you don't care about.
In what way is it lying?
The ordinary people who you are consistently refusing to tell
Give
them
me a lie.
the
Give me a
gravity
lie I've told.
of the situation
Give
we're
me a
in.
lie I've told.
The fact that you're even debating about this net zero 50-50 chance. The fact that you're even pushing back on the fact that we need to fully transition away from fossil
I haven't
fuels.
pushed back. In fact, I've said most people totally
Earlier on,
agree
you
that
told
we need to go to oil
we
and
will
gas.
always need oil and gas. Earlier on, you told me
that's
that.
absolutely one of the arguments that is made, that we will need to have a provision of oil and gas even if we reach net zero by 2050. Your argument is not. I've asked you to come on and explain why you think that is. You've superglued your hand to a microphone and you're telling people that they're complicit in genocide.
I'm telling people that you are misinforming them. I'm telling people the media have a duty to hold the government to account on this. You, as a journalist, have a duty to be telling the truth to your viewers, a truth which you're not telling them.
I'm asking you for what that truth you think is that I'm avoiding or haven't told people. What is that truth?
The truth is the situation we're in is dire.
You've told us that. You've
Sir
read
David
the report
King,
you've read the final paragraph of that
former
report.
chief scientific advisor to the British government, Labour and Tory, both sides of that party divide, told us last year, we have 3 to 4 years to determine the future of humanity. That's now 2 to 3 years. We've spent a year doing nothing. Places like this have spent a year doing nothing and still trying to push back on the fact that we need to take drastic action to secure the future for the people of this country.
Do you think it's legitimate to ask questions about this? About the method by which we get to a future that everybody is agreed must be greener? Do you think that's legitimate?
Of course, conversation is important. But what is also important,
when I'm asking you questions about it,
is the situation we are in right now. A situation we are in that is entirely the product of lack of action. Lack of action on the behalf of our government. Lack of action on behalf of fossil fuel companies. Lack of action on behalf of the media.
How have you engaged with other organisations that perhaps seek the same aims with you in other parts of the world? I mean, I'm thinking specifically in Saudi Arabia, in oil-producing countries.
I mean, you'll have seen this morning, there are people in different countries all across the world with this same demand, with the same aim, with the same movement to save their loved ones, to save the people they care about, right?
So, but again, Saudi Arabia is a massive oil-producing company. I think Saudi Aramco is worth something like 80-odd billion quid now. They are a nation that is keeping that oil industry alive. What's been done about them?
Did you bring me on here as a Just Stop Oil spokesperson or to talk about Saudi Arabian foreign affairs?
You want to just stop oil? Saudi Arabia is an oil-producing country.
Britain claims, our government claims to be a leader on climate action. It claims to be a leader in tackling the climate crisis. All we are doing is demanding that it stands by that promise, stands by the promise it's made to millions, stands by the promises it makes to governments and people across the planet. That is all we're asking it to do.
Well, you're asking that. You're asking for a transition away from oil and gas completely. I've asked you. We asked you on the programme to come and detail how that might be. You seem to get very upset at the idea that I pushed back by asking you about your own literature, which says that people, bystanders, are complicit in the greatest ever genocide, and you've glued your hand to a microphone. So thank you very much for coming on. I don't know how well it's gone down with people watching and listening and whether they feel that they're going to be joining you in your activity or whether they feel that your activity is legitimised.
We're acting because the government is...
You keep saying that. So thank you for coming on. We'll go to some news and then we'll see if we can come back.
It's Andrew Pearce here with you, actually, temporarily, in this eco-crisis. We're going to go straight into the calls. We're not going to dwell on these ridiculous eco-activists. Fiona's calling from Kendal. Hello.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Although I'm not sure that you're going to like what I have to say.
No, don't mind.
I completely disagree with what you've just said about getting rid of the green subsidy.
Ah, sure.
The problem is that sort of short-termism is what's got us in the mess that we're in. We keep saying, just open another coalfield, that'll help, just do this. We've been doing that for years and not getting in on with this really vital transition. And if we don't get on with it, we're just going... Every day we're making things worse. Every day you turn on your car engine and burn fossil fuels, we're adding to the problem.
I hear all of that, Fiona, but I think while China is still belching all that pollution into the atmosphere, United States, India, our little contribution is minor. Important. It's important,
true,
but it is minor compared to what's going on in other parts of the world.
True.
It is true.
It's not true, no, because we started it. This is historic.
Started what?
We started the Industrial Revolution here. We've got 150 years of carbon we've been shoving up in the atmosphere. And even today, all those Chinese, they're personal contribution to the fossil fuel emissions is tiny compared with that. It's smaller than ours, or just about the same.
Right.
If we put it up there, we started it.
Right.
And Andrew, could I just say, if we don't get on with it, and if we don't sort this, and if we don't stop burning fossil fuels, there's going to be more young people gluing themselves onto your microphones like you've got in the other studio, because they're driven to it. They're terrified about their future, and they have every right to be. We've been told we've got 3 years to sort this out. What the hell are we doing even discussing opening new oil fields? We're poisoning our kids.
All right, Fiona.
And I've got a grandchild I love, and I want her and her friends to have a future.
I hear you.
And I think those young people out there are bloody brave and bloody brilliant, and we ought to be joining them.
Well, I think they're reckless. But thank you for your call, Fiona. Let's go to, because these are the young people who also run in front of cars, which potentially could cause serious death, loss of life, death, injury, all that sort of thing. Remember the guy who was trying to drive his mum to hospital, and he was stuck on a motorway congestion for 6 hours, by which time she'd had a major stroke. They were not this group, not the group that's glued themselves to an LBC microphone, Stop Oil. That was Extinction Rebellion, or one of those groups anyway.